Here we are then. This is Allan Barr's wonderful diagram of synoptic relationships. The bar charts represent the first three Gospels. Matthew Gospel appears on the left and again in replica on the right for reasons that will later become apparent. It's not necessary to be able to read the words, simply the colour of the bar chart speaks volumes, and as we get in look a little closer, then other things will become apparent as well. The first thing to notice is that Mark's Gospel is the shortest. It's coloured in red. The red colouring in Mark's Gospel almost completely includes the whole Gospel. There are a few little bits that are coloured in green, and the bits that are in green, tiny bits, you can hardly see them from this distance, they are the parts of Mark's Gospel that are unique to Mark. All the parts in red of Mark's Gospel appear in one or other of Matthew and Luke, and quite a lot of the parts in red appear in all three, Matthew, Mark and Luke. When you look at the left-hand column, the parts that are marked in red are from Mark's Gospel and common with Mark. The parts that are marked in blue are common to Luke but not in Mark. And then the parts that are in white are unique to Matthew's Gospel. At a glance you can see that Matthew's Gospel is predominantly red, with some chunks of blue and little white. Luke's Gospel has a number of passages that come from that are the same as Mark, and they are in red. The bits of Luke that are unique to Luke, the bits of Luke that are then common with Matthew but not in Mark, are marked in blue, and the parts of Luke that are unique to Luke are marked in yellow. At a glance you can see that there's quite a lot of yellow in Luke's much longer Gospel. Let's move in a little more closely. You now begin to see that between Mark and Matthew and Luke there are red lines. And if we go in closer still to Mark's Gospel, you might even be able to see, but perhaps not quite, how the bar is marked into passages. Each passage has its own verse numbers and its own headings. Can you see from Mark's Gospel the red lines are going up and they don't cross over each other to Luke's Gospel for the most part. And then there are red lines that go to Matthew's Gospel, and they indicate common passages that are also in Matthew's Gospel. All those red lines, and there are by far the majority of the lines are red, don't cross over each other for the reason that they mark those passages which in Matthew and Mark are in the same order, and there we have the passages that are in Matthew and Mark and Luke, and the red lines indicate the same order, and they predominate. The black lines between Mark and Luke, or Mark and Matthew, show where there are passages that are out of order. Although there are two or three altogether at the beginning, there aren't many black lines crisscrossing over the red lines in Matthew, or for that matter, very many in Luke either. The dashed lines are distant parallels and not quite so interesting in this column. What that shows us as we stand back a little is that Matthew and Luke both follow and respect Mark's order. That's one of the arguments to suggest that Mark is perhaps the first of the Gospels. Both respect the order of his story. If we take Luke and we notice how he's got lots of his own distinctive material marked in yellow, and then he comes to a chunk of material that's red and common with Mark, and then yellow and blue, the blue being common with Matthew, then another chunk of Mark. then a whole long chunk of yellow and blue with just a hint of pink, and then a red section from Mark, yellow and blue again, another red section from Mark. What it seems Luke has done is to respect not only the order of Mark, but when he has used Mark as a basis, he's used it carefully, quoting almost word for word exactly in chunks. And then he's interspersed bits that he's got from Matthew, which we'll come back to in a moment, and his own material. And his own material predominates from chapter 9 down to chapter 18. And Luke includes in that journey to Jerusalem many of the story-like parables of Jesus' teaching. Going over to Matthew, we notice the blue and white sections interspersed with red and blue and white, and one of the things that's apparent from Matthew is that he's collected together the teaching of Jesus and put it all into 5 big sections. So what about the blue sections, where you have things that are common to Luke and Matthew but not in Mark? This is the genius of Allan Barr's simple diagram. As we move over to the right hand side, we ignore the left hand columns and we look just at Luke and Matthew. And now we see how the blue bits in Luke and Matthew are what's common to Luke and Matthew. If we look between them, we can see just faintly the blue lines that link those blue passages in Luke and Matthew. What's interesting is that almost exclusively the blue that is common to Luke and Matthew comprises sayings of Jesus. What's also interesting is that unlike the narrative of Mark when it's used by Luke and by Matthew, both of whom follow Mark's order, the sayings of Jesus can't be put in neat lines that don't crisscross with each other. They have to be organised in quite a different way, because the sayings of Jesus occur in different contexts in each of Matthew and Luke. That has led people to suggest that Mark is the original. Matthew and Luke have both used Mark and respected Mark, as indeed Luke claims in the first 4 verses of his Gospel. That in addition, Matthew and Luke use a common sayings source, given the description Q, from the German word Quelle, which simply means source. And they suggest that that's a collection of the sayings of Jesus. And so, Matthew and Luke use Mark as a source, they use Q as a source for the sayings of Jesus, and each of Matthew and Luke have their own access to independent traditions about the life and teaching of Jesus as well.